I want to get started. Welcome, and as many of you know, I'm Stephanie Peters. I'm the director of the Honors Program, and I'm really excited to be here in general, but in this space. When we started planning this at the very beginning of the semester, I said I'm going to be here on November 5th, and we're here, so I feel like that's a really good thing. I'm going to really leave most of the talking to the students, and just say that I'm really happy that we can celebrate all the really amazing work that is done in our honors courses from last spring, especially given how last spring went. For everyone, I think this work is amazing. I've been bragging about it at all the admissions events all fall to prospective students about how honors students are able to take material that may be out of their major field of study and bring whatever their interests are to bear on it. And so we have such diverse presentations today. And before I turn it over to Dean Giovanni for a welcome, I just want to thank the two honors coordinators, particularly Jennifer Stern and Mike Azuelo. I can stand around and say thank you. And of course, Bob Williams and Kevin Evans, who are getting after all the time. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Dean Giovanni to welcome you all.
Usually, we take the time to thank you all for coming, but I want to actually thank you for inviting me, because my colleagues know what academic conferences. Usually there's like one paper that looks interesting on a panel, and you have to ignore the rest just to hear that one paper. All of these papers look so amazingly interesting to me and fantastic that I cleared the rest of the afternoon so I can enjoy myself and sit and listen to this wonderful work. So thank you, thank all of our students, thank of course Dr. Peters and Dr. Carlo and Dr. Strauss and everyone else. And thank you to the families who send these wonderful students to us. And I'm really looking forward, as I said, to the next hour and a half or so where I can do all this wonderful research. So thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me also. So the way we'll proceed, I'll ask the professor one of the professors who taught the class from which these panels are done to come up and do a brief introduction and tell us a little bit about the class. And then we'll have some fellow honors students who are going to introduce each panelist before they come up with their presentation. And all the presentations are clear, so I'll make sure we're good with the text as it were. Okay? So Dr. Lamorati, you want to come up and introduce the first panel?
So thank you all for being here today. Our first panel consists of papers that came out of an honors seminar last semester that was taught by myself and Dr. Peter Luthi from the math department. This was a class on data writing called Enumerating Arguments, Mathematics and the Written Word. So math and English together at last. Dr. Luthi can't be here today. He sends his apologies, but he wants us to know he's feeling fine and is staying home entirely as a precautionary measure for the protection of community health. Dr. Luthi and I have prepared some remarks that I'll read as an introduction to this panel. The precaution that Dr. Luthi is taking now underscores the extraordinary conditions under which all our students have been studying since March. The tenacity of anyone working toward a degree today is humbling. So it's with a heightened sense of pride that we're able to recognize two especially tenacious honor students from our class last semester, Renee and Anton. Our honor seminar last semester focused on reading and writing documents with substantial data and or mathematical content. As Mark Twain famously quips, there are lies, damned lies, and statistics. My favorite big quote is, figures don't lie, but liars think. While numbers don't tell lies on their own, authors have a great deal of flexibility in which numbers they highlight. and how those numbers are presented. So in our class, we read or watched essays, videos, and reports covering a variety of viewpoints on a variety of topics. Labor discrimination, coincidences, gun control laws, police brutality, astrology, 7-game playoff series, athletes with the name Bob. Yes, you can look at the statistics with athletes named Bob, it's fascinating. And as you might imagine, COVID-19. In fact, we actually had a lesson on the data surrounding COVID the day before all our classes were online. When digesting these materials, we were less interested in determining the author's message than how the author conveyed that message through data. We forced our eyes not to glaze over when numbers came into view, which, speaking personally, my eyes do that all the time when numbers come up fast. We asked why the author chose to include some statistic instead of another statistic, or why it was phrased as, say, a percentage instead of a fraction, or how an infograph in the article might be subtly designed to push us to believe an effect is stronger or weaker than it actually is. Questions like these. This is especially hard to force ourselves to do when reading something based on a premise with which we already agree. Nonetheless, we often did just that, encouraging students to find flaws in articles that made arguments they were inclined to agree with. So even if you agree with it, you can criticize and find problems with data as well. As their final paper, we asked students to use data in a significant way to craft an argument on any topic they wished. This was a fairly open-ended assignment. Choose, essentially, any topic that interests you that involves data or numbers in some way, and defend a claim while taking into account at least one counterclaim. Honor students at the Mount are an eclectic group, and the variety of topics selected is made for good reading. The two papers being presented today come from that assignment, and they are as follows. Renee's essay is titled From Coffee with Affection, the Lesser-Known Benefits of the Widely Consumed Drink, in which she talks about some surprising health benefits of coffee, a topic near to my heart. Her citations mostly include academic papers from medical journals, which are not easy to read, let alone summarize. However, she did a great job at exactly that. Dr. Luffy says he was especially impressed with her ability to describe confidence intervals in only a couple of sentences. And as an English professor, I'm looking forward to being reminded what confidence intervals are. I think Tony's essay, Work and Education from Home During COVID-19, Is It Effective and Healthy?, examines the impact that work and learning from home has on productivity and health. Tony's paper elucidates aspects of commuting and telecommuting that are not often discussed. He keeps a nice pace and does a great job at engaging the reader. Dr. Luffy and I have many friends who have been telecommuting for months now, I'm sure we all have, and many of them have been told they're never going back to a traditional office setting, even after the pandemic is over. It would be interesting to read a follow-up essay on this topic in the years to come. So that's a brief overview of our class and the presenters. We hope you enjoyed hearing these essays presented today. Congratulations once again to all the presenters.
Our first presenter is Anton Kuzmin. Anton joined the College of Mount St. Vincent in 2019 for a business administration degree as an international student. Since then, he was actively exploring his interests in various academic fields and discovered his passion for STEM. Anton's interest in that area motivated him to start working towards a STEM-related minor or major in addition to the business administration track. Apart from that, he joined the Finance and Investment Club and Accounting Society to keep himself involved in the world of business outside the classroom. Our highly motivated Finance and Investment Club team is working extra hard to develop the most fascinating projects for the students at the Mount. Apart from that, to stay involved in campus life, Anton decided to become a resident assistant. This leadership position helps him to make the life of students living on campus more engaging and safe.
you for nice words. I really appreciate it. And yeah, the class was genuinely very interesting and engaging, even though half of it was unfortunately or fortunately online, so we get to explore different mediums, Canvas, Google Hangouts. So it was challenging, but we got through it. I believe both the professors and us and all my classmates enjoyed it. So if there would be a competition for the most obvious topic during the pandemic, I would probably compete in that because, we switched from in-person to online classes, and not only us students had experienced difficulties, but also the professors had to teach their classes through computer, and basically not to see our faces and not to have in-person interaction. So as I was reading the panel name, said enumerating arguments about health. And it was very surprising because Renee and me, again, chose similar topics about health. I believe it was, the atmosphere pushing on us, more health, it's pandemic. So let's jump into it. I'll start with anecdote. It was middle of the semester, and our 3-hour-long honor seminar got transferred into the MacBook screen, and it was, the internet connection was sometimes not very clear. The connection was sometimes bad. Problems with, visual materials, how to demonstrate to the students, how to hand out stuff to students when we were online. And, staring at the screen for 3 hours rather than coming to the classroom is a little bit different. So I decided to, Professor O'Brien, Professor Luthi said, choose any topic. So I decided to choose the topic of telecommuting. So to define the terms, telecommuting is basically working from home or studying from home, and what are the communities doing it in person. So during COVID-19, we experienced all of that, and back in 2019, pre-COVID era, 29% of people were working from home, but 28% were allowed to, but decided not to. 43% were required to be at the workplace. So how did that transfer into telecommuting? Interesting enough, by 2050, different sources predict that more than 50% will be working from home. And that would include parts of the students that would study from home, and of course, various jobs. So basically, the entire paper consisted of gathering factors for and against telecommuting, how can it benefit, how can it harm you. It's really up to every single person whether it is beneficial for them to telecommute or not, rather than statistics that is very dry and tells us what to do. So I gathered factors that are common to us, such as commute, bad habits, and of course saving money. Those are the factors that supposedly will benefit us for telecommuting, and some factors that will harm us are probably staying at home and not being in that working atmosphere. As I said, it was very interesting to transfer for our 3-hour-long class, transferred into the MacBook, and just to keep that atmosphere of the classroom, I stayed on campus, and I had the chance to keep coming to the same classroom, sit down on the same desk, open the screen, had the class in the classroom that I had it before the pandemic. So that clearly showed me, well, one factor is the atmosphere of the classroom or atmosphere of the working class. Something that keeps us going, something that keeps us working and human interaction. Another factor that I noticed for my fellow students, especially commuters, that they said that they don't have to drive anymore. They don't have to pay the bridge costs and really save their money. Clearly, gas was included too, and apart from that, we need to understand that commuters sometimes is very nervous. One of the studies that I looked into explore the effect of commute that lasted from 30 minutes to an hour per day, and it showed that it is all nervous. Whether you take a public transportation, or you drive, or you're stuck in a traffic jam. Another factor that can benefit us, not just mental health from telecommuting, is bad habits. I noticed for myself that, in between classes, I can swing by the Max Kitchen, get a big coffee, and, it's a lot of sugar, bad habits, drinking coffee. I guess we will explore more of that. But working from home, we actually cut down on some of the bad habits, such as eating junk food. Some office workers quite often disregard the fact that they can eat healthy and swing by McDonald's during their lunch break. Another one is social smoking, also taking smoking breaks. And such a bad habit is also social drinking after work. That's common in some countries. So telecommuting clearly cuts your bad habits too. And something that I noticed too among the students is the factor that harmed us is staying in focus. When you're back at home, you don't feel like you're in a working atmosphere. You're at home, you feel comfortable. And it's way harder to keep your focus on work or study, where, the class is just a computer, and you can listen in while you do something. So one of the studies that I looked into is the study of attention control theory and processing efficiency theory. With that, I took a look at the switching between tasks and how can that harm understanding, especially among students performing mathematical calculations. And as it was predicted by scientist Mazzani, it was the efficiency of the performing mathematical problems fell down because the students were switching in between different tasks. So those are the major factors that I listed for benefits versus non-benefits for telecommuting. And I believe there's much more to that to explore as we're only starting to experience the whole switch. And it definitely becomes a big part of our life. And of course, as I said earlier, by 2050, the numbers of people who are working from home will be projected to 50%. However, that prediction is made for workers, for people who are employed, but not students. I believe that there is a lack of different data and investigations and maybe more experiments on how it affects students to study from home. But I believe that it depends on every single person. Some people found it actually beneficial to study from home because it became way more convenient for them. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm going to answer, or maybe other factors that may benefit education and work in progress. Feel free to ask.
We'll leave some time for questions at the end of the panel, if that's okay.
Our second presenter for today is Renee Garon. Renee Garon is currently a sophomore at St. Louis. She's a nursing major with a Philippine Studies minor. She's also a recipient of the Corazon Aquino Scholarship and a member of the honors program. In the past year, Renee has made the Dean's List and continues to maintain a high GPA. Apart from her studies, Renee is involved with some of the clubs on campus. She recently became the newsletter editor of the Student Nurses Association, or SNA. She's been a member of Salon, which focuses on learning more about the Filipino culture for 2 years. On Sundays, Renee also works at the campus library as the student desk guy. When she's not studying, Renee enjoys listening to music, painting, and watching movies.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that introduction. So the title of my paper that I worked on last semester is called From Coffee to Perfection, the Lesson and Benefits of the Widely Consumed Drink. Just like out of curiosity, how many of you are coffee drinkers? Wow, a lot. Okay. Who here drinks at least 1 cup of coffee a day? 2 cups of coffee a day? 3 or more? Well, this is common for college students and most adults working. Introduction. When I was choosing a topic for this class, I didn't really know what I was going to work on. I wanted to do something related to the science field since I am a nursing major. And what inspired me to write about coffee are my 2 high school friends back home. Back in high school, I wasn't really a coffee drinker at all, but they would drink coffee every day. And I was like, why? It's like, I'm more of a water basics, right? And that really inspired me because up until college, that's when I started drinking coffee because of the amount of homework, stress, and catching up on like nursing classes. Sorry. So statistics-wise, one of the world's most popular beverages is coffee. The average person will most likely say that their morning consists of at least 1 cup of coffee. According to a recent statistics report, Americans consume about 2.25 billion cups of coffee per day. The health effects of coffee have long been a matter of debate, particularly the consumption of large amounts of the beverage. But many people assume that consumption of large amounts of coffee can lead to various health problems. However, there are actually some health benefits for the average coffee drinkers in this room. So that brings us to today's topic. Despite the common belief that drinking a lot of coffee can have negative health effects, many studies show that coffee may have positive effects on the body after all, including the reduced risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease. So for my research paper, I mainly focused on these 3 health conditions, since I found a lot of sources on them. So the first health condition I'll be discussing today is type 2 diabetes mellitus. According to many studies, it has been discovered that the high consumption of coffee along with its substances helps prevent the harmful symptoms of type 2 diabetes. While it is quite difficult to scientifically verify which exact aspects of coffee are beneficial to humans, many researchers
have postulated that chlorogenic acid, or as you can see, CGA, is one possible significant contributor. So, as I was researching, I found out that glucose 6-phosphatase is a key enzyme for producing glucose in the body, and CGA, or chlorogenic acid, has an inhibitory effect on the production of glucose 6-phosphatase, so it helps lower the production of glucose in the body and can reduce the harmful symptoms of hyperglycemia, which is high blood sugar. So, like Dr. Labrati explained, the class was both English and math together. To be honest, I'm not very good at math, so Dr. Lupin helped me a lot with this portion. Based on the graph, you can see that high intakes of coffee are inversely associated with the risk of type 2 diabetes mellitus. So we call this the dose-response analysis. It's defined as a relationship between the body's level of exposure in response to a certain substance. So in this case, the more exposed you are, or the more amounts of coffee that you consume, there's a certain response that you get. In this case, that response will be the reduced risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And over here, this chart explains basically the consumption of 6 cups a day of coffee was associated with 33% lower risk of type 2 diabetes. So similarly, there's just a strong inverse relationship between consuming large amounts of coffee and the reduced risk of getting health conditions like type 2 diabetes. One of my other sources for type 2 diabetes is basically explaining the same thing again. Imbibing 1 cup of coffee per day protects against type 2 diabetes by 13%, and then 4 cups of coffee can protect up to 47%, and of course, the more cups of coffee you drink, the higher the percentage. So, overall summary, more cups of coffee you consume, the lower the risk of you developing type 2 diabetes. So, before I switch the slide, the next health condition that I'll be discussing is Alzheimer's disease. Recent studies have confirmed that coffee plays an important role in preventing cognitive difficulties, more specifically Alzheimer's disease. Okay. Based on this experiment, which I used in my paper, it was an experiment about mice. So scientists tested on mice whether more cups of coffee had an effect on them. And they saw that drinking 5 or more cups of coffee protects the brain's primary neuronal cells against Alzheimer's. So since Alzheimer's disease is caused by brain cell death, the ability that caffeinated coffee has to protect the deterioration of brain cells is crucial. So the third health condition that I discussed is Parkinson's disease. In addition to Alzheimer's disease, there are many tests showing a connection between the daily intake of coffee and the prevention of Parkinson's disease. So based on this Finnish study, 10 cups of coffee a day or more might protect against Parkinson's disease. Finland's National Public Health Institute concluded that the heaviest coffee drinkers were at 84% reduced risk of developing Parkinson's disease. So, similarly to diabetes and also Alzheimer's, the more amounts of coffee that you drink, the higher the reduced risk of developing that certain health condition. Okay, for this part of my paper, Dr. Labrati helped me a lot, so thank you. So although there have been much research that shows the positive effects that coffee has on the body, many people still associate the widely consumed beverage with having adverse health effects. One source says that the potential downside is that when you drink several cups of coffee daily, unpleasant effects can occur, such as coronary palpitations, hyperactivity, shaking from excess caffeine, gastrointestinal difficulties, and also sleep disturbances. However, They're relatively minor and outweighed by the benefits of high consumption of coffee. For example, it may be true that excessive coffee consumption can have a dangerous effect on certain populations like those who are pregnant or the elderly, but it does not necessarily apply to the general population who do not experience these particular conditions. So overall, what I learned from the paper, although some people believe the high consumption of coffee can have negative health effects, several studies reveal that coffee may have positive effects on the body after all, including the reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and Parkinson's disease. Although the subject of coffee may be trivial, it actually intersects with broader concerns about public health. It opens up questions on what people's diets and lifestyle should be. Even though vast amounts of data in this paper show that benefits of drinking coffee in large quantities, it is important to remember that some of this is observational, so there should be more research done in order to pinpoint what substances in coffee are actually beneficial to humans. These are just my references. I used a few. Some of them are tricky to understand, so I have help from my professors. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
So maybe if Renee and Dr. walk our way, Renee and Tony want to come up and maybe 5 minutes to ask questions, and then we'll transition to the second panel. That's okay? My thoughts? I'll do a question. If anyone wants to jump in and ask anything of our panelists. You probably don't think a lot of quarantine. Anyone want to ask a question? Yes, Val.
How many topics did you go through before you decided on this one?
Did everybody hear the question that asked, how many topics did you consider before deciding on this? It was such an open kind of assignment.
Of course. I honestly had the topic, if I remember correctly, before the effect of telecommuting on the health efficiency. I think it was touching on the effects of oil price, COVID, and currency pairs trading. But it was so early in the pandemic, it was starting, so we couldn't find enough information to support the correlation between those three.
For me, I knew I wanted to do something in the science field, and like I said, what inspired me was my friend, so I didn't really have any other, I didn't go through different topics, I just picked this one.
Yes, in terms of work and education from home, I was particularly interested in knowing how does the impact of technology influence, especially with students working from home, how fast and effective it is. Like, typical example is how you transition into online courses and then you are going to Canvas and so forth. How does that really look impactful for specifically international students? The change of technology, virtual learning, how internet mobility can really influence their work. How effective does it get?
So, great question. Again, as I said, it depends from case to case, basically. Whether the student is comfortable to simply because the more ways of getting information, we try to learn more about ourselves. So some students are visual learners, some students love to comprehend information through listening. I guess professors know even more about that. So we just explored ourselves, and of course it brought challenges. Some students or professors didn't have good enough connection, or the technology didn't allow to do it sometimes. I guess there was even weather conditions one day where some people could not join the class. So it's probably something that did not depend on us. And so the question is, how are we going to transition? Whether everybody's going to be required to transition, or is it going to be partial? Academic honesty questions, of course. All of that needs to be taken into consideration in order to make wise and helpful decisions about that.
All right, let's thank our panelists. All right, so if I could ask Dr. Gallo to introduce our second panel.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to say that Dr. Zukowski would have been here if he could have been, and that Dr. Z, if you're watching, we miss you, we love you. Right, guys? Our honors program is designed to take students on adventures in mastering and integrating different fields of knowledge. In sophomore honors, we explore the 16th century as it unfolded in English history. No century and no course is better for history and theology to form a more perfect marriage. Unlike Henry VIII's many attempts. No course is better than sophomore honors, the Tudor Reformations. For the 16th century, the time of the Protestant Reformation, and particularly that unique Reformation that England underwent in the reign of her second Tudor monarch, Henry VIII, offers no better, and frankly, I believe our students will agree as well, no more fun way to do this. As we saw in the course, King Henry VIII and his successors, Edward VI, Mary I, and the Virgin Queen, Elizabeth I, shaped the future and affected the world we live in so many ways. Every student in sophomore honors did excellent research on many different aspects of the time of these significant rulers. The young scholars whose work we highlight today are representative of that quality. They use the course as a springboard for exploring the intersection of the Tudor period with their own particular majors. With Jen delving into business and finance by examining Cardinal Wolsey's fiscal policies. By Micah's exploration of the field of medicine and nursing by examining Henry VIII's health story. And with Gray's comparison of the history of a dreaded disease of that time, sweating sickness, with the one we are facing in ours, COVID-19. Both Dr. Zukowski and I are very proud to have worked with so many outstanding students over the years, and in particular this class in spring of 2020 who worked under tremendous pressures but did an outstanding job. We hope that you will enjoy hearing the wisdom of our most recent students, which we now share with you. Thank you.
junior accounting major. She is vice president of the CMSD Accounting Society and works on campus as a first-year experienced peer leader and a development program coordinator. She's an orientation leader for incoming Mount students for the past 2 summers. Also this past summer, Jennifer had an accounting internship at Homebrewer Realty Corporation. This is Jennifer's second year co-organizing and presenting at the Honors Program Symposium. Last year, she presented her research entitled Comprehending Contributions, Political Equality Against Unlimited and Non-Disclosed Campaign Contributions by the Wealthy. She is excited and grateful to have the opportunity to present at this year's symposium. She will present a paper, The Successes and Failures of Thomas Wolsey's Fiscal Policies in Tudor England, 1522 to 1525. Also, a major failure of this method
goal is to raise 800,000 pounds. The subsidy that was eventually implemented was much different than the one that was initially proposed by Wolsey to Parliament due to Parliament's disapproval of the amount that was being asked for of the people. Wolsey's initial proposal was a 20% tax on all land and goods. After multiple sessions of deliberation between Wolsey and Parliament, they concluded with the assessment rates that you can see here, which was roughly a 10% tax on certain land and sales, 5% on others, and for it to be collected over 4 years instead of 2 years, which Wolsey wanted. Because the conditions changed so drastically from its initial proposal, the subsidy collected only about 150,000 pounds, not its goal of 800,000, but it was still more than the 15 to 10 system was collecting. So, still in need of more money. Wolsey implemented the applicable grant of 1525. Again, the objective was to generate 800,000 pounds. The assessment rates are what you can see here, and it was a tax on annual income or revenue for the clergy and the laity. So the applicable grant was called a benevolence. This essentially means that it was a non-parliamentary loan. Because the loan was not enforceable by Parliament, Wolsey was relying on the friendliness and willingness of the people to pay. This is why it was considered the applicable grant. However, this was not received too well by the people, and it ultimately led to the applicable grant rebellion. The major problem was simply that people could not afford the loans. The reason that they could not pay was not a direct result of the applicable grant itself, but rather the accumulated circumstances facing the people. So some of the reasons why the people rebelled against the grant was that the forced loans for 15 to 22 and 23 were still unpaid by the government. People were financially suffering from the subsidy of 1523. There were larger societal and economic factors facing the people, such as poverty and low income. Plus, the amount being requested from the applicable grant itself was extremely high. So, people were not necessarily against the idea of going to war with France. They simply did not have enough money to fund it after all the money they had already paid from the past 2 years of Wolsey's financial policies. So the concerns were addressed by the Duke of Norfolk after the rebellion of about 4,000 people approached and the assessment rates were cut in half. But some people were still not happy, and the idea of going to war with France and the grant were both abandoned. So all of this backlash and rebellion reflected very early on Wolsey and King Henry VIII, which led King Henry VIII to deny any knowledge of it, and so Wolsey ended up having to take full responsibility for it. And so some cite this as one of the first failures that ultimately led to Wolsey's fall from power. And so, for all those reasons, I believe that given Henry VIII's extreme spending, Wolsey was successful in the short run because he was able to implement different revenue-generating systems, such as the forced loan and the subsidy, but unsuccessful in the long run due to the failure of a backlash from the applicable grant. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Val. Michael Abswell is a junior honors nursing student. She's working as an honors program coordinator for her second year alongside Dr. Beatrice and Jennifer Stern. She's the president of the CMSB Players, an on-campus acting and performance club, and the treasurer of Samahan, a Filipino cultural club. You can find her participating in various activities as a general body member of the Anime Video Game Club and the Filament Dance Troupe, and as a collaborator for successful events with other clubs on campus. Outside of her club and her school activities, Micah can be found taking long walks, taking pictures, and drawing portraits and scenery. She enjoys reading comics and stories that touch upon history and uncovering mysteries. She is very proud and excited to present her research. From Fit to Filled Out, a study on Henry VIII's overall health, Michael would like to thank her family, friends, and friendly faculty for guiding and supporting her through education and research.
Hello again, my name is Martha. Thanks, Jen. So, yes, my research's name is From Fit to Filled Out, a study on Henry VIII's overall health, and my presentation is called Illnesses, Wounds, and Genes, Oh My. This is an edited picture of Henry VIII when he was younger, to Dorothy. So this is a picture of Henry VIII when he was 17 years old, and just one of the few things that really caught my attention when I was thinking about my research was all the different pictures that Dr. Gallo and Dr. Dukas showed us of Henry VIII, like this one, myself, and he just looks so young and fit, and we used to call him handsome, like questionable, but and my question to myself was just, how did this young, athletic, supposedly good-looking young man turn into this obese, paranoid king that just wanted to kill everyone who seemed to want to overthrow him? And so I sort of approached this from a health history standpoint, so I think it's one thing that we should keep in mind is what health actually means. So according to the World Health Organization, health is the state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of disease and infirmity. So an example of that would be if my vital signs were okay, if I didn't have a cold, if I didn't have any wounds, if I didn't suffer from anything, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm healthy, because that doesn't account for my mental or social well-being. So we'll be touching on Henry VIII's development from a young child to an adult, and just all those different aspects. So just a little bit of background. Henry VIII is a youth. He's athletic. He was the second prince in line to the throne. His brother, Prince Arthur of Wales, he was the one in line. So he was raised Henry. He was raised by his maid's mother. He got a good education. He was able to flourish in the arts, music, dancing, poetry, and all that stuff. And there's an example on to the left. It's Pastime with the Company. It's one of the compositions he made in his middle age. But it's just an example of how he was so engrossed in art and just poetry and music and all these different things, even in his older age. And just one thing that really caught my eye was that he studied theology, which sort of makes sense because at the time, noble people who were second, third, fourth born, who weren't in line to inherit their family's goods, they were sent to the convent or to the monastery, so they would study theology. And that just sort of made me think, like, is this why he was so prideful about his knowledge of theology when he was a king? He was, he declared himself the head of the Anglican Church, and he almost arrested his last wife because he was debating with him on the knowledge of theology. Like, he's crazy. And yeah, he was also considered the defender of the faith, so of course he would have a lot of pride and knowledge about theology. But he didn't end up going to the monastery. He became king because his brother died. There were a lot of diseases at the time. It was very, just not advanced. They didn't have a lot of knowledge about medicine. They didn't have a lot of knowledge about healthcare, how things worked in the body. So he had a lot of fear about that because his brother died from a sweating sickness that he's going to touch on a little later. His father died from tuberculosis, and no one really knows how anything works. So this fear sort of took over him because he knew if he got sick, he didn't have an heir, he didn't have a son. His sisters would have to take over. There would be no one left from his lineage to continue their engineer dynasty, and his entire position sort of relied on his good health. So this obsession made him create the Royal College of Physicians and the United Company of Art Surgeons, which sort of focused on improving medicine, the practice of medicine and healthcare. It didn't really work out because he still got sick. He got malaria and just a bunch of other sicknesses. But he persevered. A lot of people thought he would die. He continued to live. We're going to touch on a little more about his athletic injuries because, like I said, he was very athletic. He loved doing different sports like road tennis, he loved hunting, loved bear baiting, he loved jousting. And jousting is a really important one because there are two major incidents that he got really injured. There was one when he was jousting with his friend Brandon. And if you don't really know what jousting is, it's when you're on horses and you're like facing each other and you have these lances and you come at each other and you're just trying to fall off. And a lot of points are scored based on lances and shields and stuff. But anyways, his visor was up, so the opposing lance from Charles Brandon came and hit him right above his eye. So he got a lot of bruising, probably a lot of brain damage, and he came out of that incident with a lot of migraines. There was a second incident in 1536. He was thrown off of his horse, and then the horse fell on him. Yes. He sustained a lot of really bad head injury and probably a lot of brain damage from that, which a lot of researchers say is connected to the general bad health and obesity that he had when he was older. And then I added the road tennis over there because I just thought it was important to know that he had a lot of leg injuries. He's twisted his feet, he can barely walk now. It's just a lot of pain for him. This is all I really want to talk about because he's morbidly obese. So Henry VIII, as a king, has very extravagant meals. He has 20 dishes per meal, and there are no fruits, no vegetables, because that's peasant food. So he ate a lot of birds meat, meat, fish meat, He had alcohol, there was no water. So you can just imagine what that does to your blood pressure, hypertension. And it's suspected that he probably had scurvy, which is lack of vitamin C in your system, which is usually very treatable now. But since they didn't have the medicinal knowledge back then, he deteriorated from it. Scurvy you can normally see when your gums start deteriorating, and it's just bad. They use different pastes with like natural things like worms and carcasses and just mash that up with paste whatever wound. They also suspect that he had diabetes, like I said, because of the breath of alcohol. He had a lot of carbs, his blood sugar went up. Also, like he could barely walk, like I said, because of his horse injuries. And, oh yeah, I calculated his BMI. I'm not sure if you guys know what BMI is, but it's the body mass index, and it's something you calculate when you have your weight in your head. And he was 400 pounds, and he was 6'2", so his BMI came out to be 51.4, and the normal BMI is 18.5 to 24.9. So you can sort of imagine how badly his health is just progressing. A lot of experts also think that he had osteomyelitis, which is a bone disease, which sort of like tells you why he was always in constant pain from walking. And that would make it even worse because basically immobile. He could barely move on his own. It worse for his diabetes and obesity because he wasn't doing all the athletic things he did when he was younger, so he inflated like a weight. A lot of people think he had Cushing's syndrome, which happens when you have too much cortisol. It's a stress hormone in your body. And you can see that happen when you have too much fat. Well, you like get too much fat. You'll have a moon-shaped face. You'll get a buffalo hump on your back, which is made of fat. And a lot of things can happen, like decreased healing. So the wounds that he had, like ulcers and stuff, they weren't healing. He'd get bleeding bones, which doesn't make it worse or have it increased the risk for diabetes and hypertension, which he already had. And there are some mental things that can happen if you have Cushing syndrome, like irritability, insomnia, you can have mood swings and psychotic behavior. And these are some things that I thought about when I was considering how this affected his brain, because this might have been like reason for him becoming a tyrant when he was older. But a lot of researchers think that he had Nicolai syndrome. And Nicolai syndrome is a hereditary disorder. It's an X-linked disorder, so it's most likely to happen in men, which only have one X chromosome, so females only have two. And Nicolai syndrome mostly affects people with the CAL-positive antigen. CAL is a type of protein that helps you determine what type of blood you have. And only 3% of the world supposedly had a CAL-positive antigen, and Henry was believed to be part of that. Now, the U.S. National Library of Medicine believes that the Nicolai syndrome is a mental disorder that manifests in depression, bipolar disorder, psychosis, obsessive-compulsive disorder, change in personality, and lack of restraint. And these are all things that Henry exhibited when he was in his middle life. He started having a lack of reasoning and judgment, which we'll talk about a little later with executions. Another thing I'd like to touch on about his CAL-positive antigen is that it might have affected how he had no air to from, because with blood types now, you can see this in AB, O, AB blood types. If you have contrasting blood types, like with the male, like Henry was CAL-positive, and the female was CAL-negative, then the baby's blood type, if it were CAL-positive and become negative mom, then the body of the mom will start to reject the baby's genes, or at least for the second and third. Because for the first child, the blood of the baby wouldn't fully integrate with mom's. But after they give birth to the first child, the mom would start creating antibodies to counteract CAL-positive proteins like the baby. So if she tried having any more children that were CAL-positive, they would probably die. This happened a lot with Anne Boleyn, who was one of Henry's wives. She had one child, Elizabeth, that we know of, and furthermore, the rest of her children didn't make it. So that's just an example of how we think that he was CAL-positive and had lost it. And a lot of people think that he had very big mental status change and psychotic behavior. A lot of people think there's a drastic personality change. A lot of people think that he was a latent tyrant, that he was bound to become a tyrant eventually anyways. And a lot of people just think that, oh, he was getting a brain injury. That's why he's acting on him. But it's just important to remember that a lot of things that are happening to Henry at the time. He was under a lot of stress. Like in 1536, he married Anne Boleyn, he got rid of Catherine. He was the head of the church. He had to balance the social, religious, and political powers that he had control over. And one source that I found said that whether Henry had Nicolai syndrome or not, his knowledge stayed, but his approach to decision-making and rationality went away. So normally, he would, whenever he needed to make a decision, he would look at it and carefully think about it. He was super cautious. He would sit on it for a while and make sure that one decision he made would be the final decision he made. But then it stopped. He kept going back and forth. He started having decisive behavior. It just wasn't great for him. And then this can be shown with his executions, like his rationality, decision making. He executed two people I want to talk about. John Fisher and Thomas More. They're both very popular figures at the time. John Fisher was a theologian, bishop, and cardinal, and he openly spoke about how he was against Henry and all his ideals and like his marriage with one of the Catholics. And he wrote books, and he could have clearly been arrested like long before he was arrested. But it took him so long before he finally was, and it makes sense. But the second one, Thomas More, doesn't make as much sense. Thomas More served as his Lord Chancellor, and even though he didn't completely agree with Henry's ideas, there was no particular reason to execute him. Like, he didn't speak out against him openly, and it makes sense to me. It's like logical to think for me that it's the paranoia that developed from his diseases that made him execute people who were threats to his reign. And this is just a little slide that I want you guys to think about. You can really like if you think about this. Like, assuming Henry did, what if Henry didn't eat and breathe as he did? What if he didn't get injured, but he didn't sustain all his brain injuries? Like, what if he didn't exhibit those different symptoms of paranoia and those things of McCall syndrome? What if he was held negative? Like, would he still be a tyrant? Would he have children? Would he have had to marry 6 women? I don't know the answer. But I would just like to say we were playing game because although he was a paranoid old man who made a lot of people fear for their lives, he was very insignificant. A lot of people remember him. They write books about him. He's just very interesting, and I think it's important to learn from how he lived and ruled and to understand his life and just maybe to apply a bit of what we learned to our own lives. And yes, he's only human. There's just a little question to worry about.
I'm very excited to be here today as presenter for today. The last presenter is the one that's called she's a junior student in honors program. She's a double major in history and communication with a minor in feminist studies. Renee is from Queens, New York. She's heavily involved in international conservation. She's currently a tour guide for the Office of the Nation. She's also a senator in the class of 2022. She's a delegate of the UN college here, and also she's an executive woman of both CNN Seekers and also the video game for ABG, and she's also a general member of SAPA. You can find one channel of action to celebrate the medium, whether it's photography, writing, videography, and more. Renee feels very blessed to have one of her share of research. We should start to reaction to the epidemic more time. A timely, important topic to hold with everyone today. She would like to express her gratitude and appreciation of God and our family and friends for their unconditional love and support, and to the non-faculty, especially the professors, for challenging more and believing in our sense of staff. We all much ado, ladies and gentlemen, and with the humble privilege to welcome Renee Payne as she presents on the topic, reaction to the epidemic water, a comparison analysis of reactions to the study sickness and development programs. Thank you.
Hello, okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Renee Payne, and I'm going to present to you my research on reactions to epidemics over time. I will compare and analyze different reactions to the spotted sickness and novel coronavirus. Also, I just want to say thank you to my parents, my brother, my friends, and of course, Dr. Gallo and Dr. Zukowski for an amazing last semester. One of the best classes I've truly taken, and I don't mean that lightly. And so spotted sickness or pseudoangiosis is an epidemic that struck England in a series of 5 different instances. According to Paul Heyman, Leopold Simons, Crystal Colkis, some of the symptoms of the virus including chills and tremors, quickly followed by high fever and great weakness. And bodies are also covered with perspiration, showing that over the course of 24 hours, people with the disease literally died of sweating. Another respiratory epidemic that occurred about 500 years later is the
psychological effects of the disease. How did the disease affect somebody's mental state? And the last part of my research will talk about how respected government officials dealt with their diseases. For the sweating sickness, I'll talk about King Henry VIII, and for coronavirus, I'll talk about Donald Trump. Overall, after addressing all the points of research, I contend that while medical practices have changed in Stuart England, the reactions to disease in medical, psychological, and political standpoint still remain the same. And before I go further along into my research, I just want to say that all the data that I have on coronavirus is from February 2020 to April 2020. So some of it is not current, but it was research that I did during the duration of the class. So medical practices in Stuart England were different than they are today, but the mindset of medical professionals when combating these new diseases were still the same. In order to understand the mindset of these medical professionals, we need to understand how the diseases were dealt with in their respective time periods. So in Stuart England, not many people had access to medicine. Medicine was intimately associated with religion, and many people prayed to saints, they used charms, and made remedies. And in the modern day pandemic, we have medical professionals, we have a special group of scientists, or the CDC, and we have these policies for the most part. It's much different than prayers and herbal remedies that were used to fight epidemics during the Tudor era. And if we go back to the last slide, so that despite the creation of different methods to fight the pandemic, the mindset of these professionals regarding diseases has not changed. Professionals have shown indifference and lack of care to the general public. According to John Tillman and Francis Cate, they write that sweating sickness clearly confounded the medical practitioners of the day, and once an epidemic started, contemporaries were likely to conjoin that disease with other diseases into one great pestilence. In a sense, preclinical disease was a social construct. Disease was confusing to medical professionals during the Tudor era, and the best solution was to combine or compare so that this new confusing disease all of a sudden made sense. And due to these practices, however, it brought more danger to the general public. According to a physician at the time, Creighton, he records that once patients were known to have symptoms of sweating sickness, they were placed instantly to bed, covered in clothes, windows being closed until the patient finally, in his rehearsal of hell, being bathed in an agonizing sweat, gave up the ghost. So basically, when medical professionals found out we have the sweating sickness, they left you to die. And if you go back to the next slide, in the CDC at the beginning of the pandemic was confused about the severity of the disease. So this can be seen in the reports that were released from the end of February to the middle of March. In February 2020, the CDC did not recommend social distancing or the closing of schools because it would be disruptive to community practices as a whole, even though there were studies that showed that having these measures would be beneficial. And in March, 2 weeks later, the CDC also writes that they will continue to update current recommendations and develop new resources and guidances. Instead of preventing the disease as a whole, the CDC dealt with the disease as it progressed. And another similarity in the reactions of these diseases include the psychological reaction of fear. In this slide and the next are two quotations that show how much fear the sweating sickness instilled in people that lived with it. When Thomas More, who was an important official to King Henry, wrote about this disease to Erasmus, he describes how he lost a friend to sweating sickness. He believed this friend was safe because this friend did not have any pre-existing conditions. He took care of himself, but he still died. And he uses strong diction when describing it. He calls it the greatest sorrow and danger, and he sees multitudes of people all around him dying, to the point where folks would rather die out in war, to the point that rather than being in the city where this disease was. And John Pius writes about the severity of the disease. And some of his diction also denotes how terrifying this disease really was. He describes it as something that is sharp and something that is cruel, and he also describes it as something that vexes. All of these words regard the sweating sickness with malicious intent. When Pius described the sickness as one that immediately killed some in opening their windows and playing with their children in the street doors, some in an hour, many into it destroyed. As it happened, so it took them. His words, they show that he fears a disease because it is one that would take somebody away at any given time. And fear is also the primary psychological reaction during the beginning of the pandemic, and arguably even now. In a study conducted by the University of Montana for Amazon workers, it shows how much fear played a role in the pandemic response. A result of the study is displayed in Table 1. So 90% of people feel threatened by the coronavirus. 92% of people feel afraid of the coronavirus. And 87% are afraid that people that they love, or they themselves will be close to people that they love with the virus. And 80% of people have avoided people with the virus because they don't want to get people sick. So another contact result is a study conducted with medical professionals in China. So the study shows that a considerable proportion of participants had symptoms of depression. That was 50.4%. 44.6% had anxiety, 34% had insomnia, and 72% had distress. Overall, fear of disease as a psychological response was present with the sweating sickness and is now also present with the coronavirus. And finally, I will discuss how respective government leaders of the time dealt with pandemics. When it comes to disease, an ineffective leader as a whole especially translates to an ineffective leader during catastrophe. So first, I will discuss how King Henry dealt with sweating sickness. So King Henry's response is to eat out of London or instantly leave London, and he thinks that he has the mind of a mastermind because he thinks of unconventional ways to fix this problem. Miles Shore, who wrote a psychological analysis on King Henry, said that his anxiety about disease, for instance, was noteworthy, even in an era when sickness was extremely dangerous. At the first sign of sweating sickness, Henry would terminate the court and set out across the countryside, moving from palace to palace with only his physician and one or two retainers. In the midst of the courtship, when Anne Boleyn had the sweats at the family estate at Hever, Henry sent her loving notes and dispatched Dr. William Butts, I don't make up names, his private physician, but he kept himself stay far away. Fearful as he was of sickness, he became an amateur physician. He read about medicine and prescribed remedies for his friends. According to dates in his privy purse expenses for 1529 to 32, he placed orders with the apothecary twice a year, in autumn and in spring. And he was also a really poor patient, and he didn't like to stay in bed or follow his doctor's advice when he was ill or injured. And next, I'll talk about how Donald Trump dealt with the coronavirus and how it was similar to King Henry's reaction. So, see here are two tweets, made well into 2 months into the pandemic. The tweet on the left complains about fake news, while the tweet on the right, which was published 20 minutes after the tweet on the left, shows him blaming his mishaps on the coronavirus on the Democrats. So Donald Trump sort of makes more of an effort to save himself rather than to stop the pandemic, which is similar to a way that King Henry protected his own wealth at the expense of the people he ruled. Also, when President Trump got the virus himself earlier in October, it was made sure that he received the best possible care at the fastest time, while many people unfortunately died. There are many things that President Trump could have done to avoid the severity of the virus to grow the way that it did in April 2020. Eric Lipton, a writer for the New York Times, cites many instances where Trump could have done more work in preventing the virus, but he did not. Lipton cites the January 2020 as a whole as an instance where Trump could have worked on effectively preparing for the coronavirus, but he focused on other issues, an array of figures inside of his government. Lipton also cites that the president was slow to absorb all the scales of the risk and act accordingly, focusing instead on controlling the message, protecting gains of the economy, and adding away warnings from senior officials. Other instances include when he compared the virus to flu, and he has also proposed many ideas on when the virus will go away, like sunlight and warmer temperatures, as well as an array of drugs, including the malaria drug, which he has promoted as a what you have to lose
of providing a sense of fear, thus creating a psychological burden. And due to the psychological burden, it caused an ineffective leadership from the leadership at that time when dealing with these diseases. So, I want to end with this. We can only hope in the future that we can be more prepared for a pandemic or for an epidemic in the future. Thanks for listening. There's one more slide, which is my sources. Sorry.
Why don't you go with Jennifer and Mikey, you want to come up? Answer a couple questions before we conclude.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say congratulations to the final speakers who have been first. I was very fascinated by each of their topics, especially for the health and the public policy aspect about it. And my question is just on a general basis to all of the speakers, because everything is correlated. So in terms of policy, right? And I know that I was in the class with, so I probably forget I listened to this presentation also in class, so it makes it look better and understanding even now and also in class too. And my question is to Geneva Stan. Basically in terms of the failure of some of our state fiscal policy, how does that really relate to the current policies that we have in place in terms of which is basically the current deficit policy that provide over to the top of the less rich grades in the US, that those that own major components. Do you think that how the working class were very high grade and they had to protest against it? Do you think that has similar reaction to how working class feel right now, especially during the current electoral process? And my last question to the health of the Kenya is in terms of because spoke about she spoke basically about the health of hearing aids, which basically changed from being slave to being very important at some point in time. And also in terms of hearing aids, what do you think should be better advices for people who they think they have wealth, they have everything at their disposal, and at some point in time they feel their personal health? What specific advice do you think should be given to them? And my last question is to Renee, which is with the comparative analysis between COVID-19 and that of the sweating sickness that is going on, do you think in terms of the epidemic of the sweating sickness and COVID-19 crisis, do you think comparing both crises, do you think which one would rather be the more dangerous aspect of society, either COVID-19 or the sweating crisis? Because the sweating sickness also was an epidemic that have completely lost during time. Yes, I don't know if you guys remember all the questions. I'm sorry for asking, I just put it down.
So as far as your question about how I compare our deficits now to both your policies, so now if you want to consider what Henry had in England to be a deficit, so now the ways that we can finance a deficit and get rid of a deficit is you can issue bonds to people, which is basically a government loan. You can print more money, or you can raise taxes. So I would say that it's definitely, well, we have three methods that kind of balance out each other now to kind of reduce like inflation and all that. We'll be definitely resorted more to raising taxes, but you also can use forced loans, which now if you want to buy a bond, you can buy a bond. It's pretty much considered risk-free. Treasury bills or like the government bonds are risk-free, whereas for forced loans with floating, people weren't getting paid back, so confidence in our government, even with the deficit in the roads during multi-use government.
To answer my question, just to reiterate also, you asked whether the spike sickness or the coronavirus had more of an effect, right? So my answer is the coronavirus in general, because the coronavirus has a worldwide effect. Like almost all the countries in the world got hit by the coronavirus. The spike sickness was something that was censored in England. And the spike sickness also didn't reach pandemic level, unlike the coronavirus. And it's very hard to tell, especially with the information that we have now. Now that we have more access to information with coronavirus, unlike the spike sickness, what I said before, that spike sickness could have been a social construct, who knows. But a lot of people died from it, but we don't have much concrete information in general to tell about the spike sickness like we do the coronavirus. What we do know about the coronavirus now is we can conclude that it's more dangerous than spike sickness. Can you repeat your question?
So basically, my question is primarily in terms of the health of hearing aid. So how does it really apply to our body work when people who in the case of hearing aid neglecting health and so forth, do you think it will happen more better in our body work than within that space of time?
Oh, so you're asking like if every day was here now, would it get better? Oh, for sure. Well, considering his personality, he was very paranoid. He was very like thinky, so he wouldn't really take anything from anyone. I believe if someone gave him advice about his health, they'd have to be really gutsy. Though I do believe if his advisors did guide him directly, he would have not reached how obese and how diseased he was. I think he would have had better access to knowledge about his diet. People would have known how to treat like the ulcers that he had. They would have known how to treat McCloud syndrome, even though it's like rare. We're still able to do genetic testing. We're still able to do blood testing, CMP, CBCs, all different types of lab testing to keep track on his mental status because health is such an important thing to him. I think he would have spoken a lot with like different physicians and people who were advanced in medical fields so that he could keep his health intact. So yeah, I believe he would have been a lot better if that's your question.
But I think something that's really interesting to me is just how much relevance all of these papers have, and I think one of these questions touched on that. People, I mean, I actually Shakespeare, as most of you know, so I'm particularly interested in the 16th century, but I think people think, oh, what does that have to do with right now? And as all of our papers show, I think what we do in the classroom has a lot to do with right now. So let's just thank all 5 of our presenters for this. I really appreciate it, and we will continue the conversation after. So have a great